DuPage County Sheriff James Mendrick is running for governor. Mendrick announced today he will seek the Republican nomination in 2026. Sheriff highlighted his law enforcement credentials in a Facebook post, saying the state's criminal justice reforms are preventing officers from keeping people safe. Mendrick has been DuPage County Sheriff since 2018. He became the subject of controversy in 2023 when he and a handful of other sheriffs said they would not enforce the state's assault rifle ban. Mendrick is the first candidate to announce for 2026. Governor Pritzker has not said if he will seek a third term.
Everybody, I've got a great interview for you today. I've got a sheriff out in Illinois, back where everything's happening with J.B. Pritzker. His name is Sheriff James Mendrick. He's also running for governor. He's a 30-plus year veteran of law enforcement. And with everything that's going on right now, we're going to have to dig in and find out what the heck is going on with police across the country. Sheriff Mendrick, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
So before I get into your governor campaign, tell me where DuPage County is and the relation to where it is near the hotbed of Chicago.
Right next door. So, yeah, we're DuPage County. We're right next door to Cook County. We're the second biggest county in the state. So we have just under 1 million people. I have the second largest correctional facility. And a good amount of my customers come from the Cook County side.
I like how you said that, customers. you move in a different kind of product, but that just cracked me up when you said that. So I guess in 30 years of law enforcement, you've pretty much seen it all. Have you seen anything like what we're seeing today? I mean, there's stuff in Minneapolis, and it seems now that New Jersey and their new governor, Virginia new governor, what the heck is going on? Have law enforcement lost their minds?
So I've never seen anything like this in my life. So this really is all transition, probably over the last 7 or 8 years. Believe me, it takes a lot to get a sheriff to actually run for governor. This is not something I would have normally done. But, you know, when I'm talking to my family where I don't even feel it's safe for them to go out, and certainly not into the city that's 30 minutes from my home, we were talking about moving to Alabama. And then I'm like, you know, why do we have to move? Because everything is so horrible. Excuse me. So we figured, we chose as a family. I don't do anything without my wife. Trust me, I have to ask permission to do these things. But you know, we determined that, you know, it was basically a fight or flight, you know, and we determined that we're going to fight because we're this close to fleeing and just saying, let's scrap Illinois. But, you know, they over complexify things. If we would just start following the laws and not get into this radicalization, things would be a lot different. I mean, there's two major things that have changed Illinois for the worse, and it's the sanctuary state and the Safety Act. And I try to explain to people because, and this will fit into your precursor about what's going on all over the nation. You know, here's what people need to understand about sanctuary states. They are the cause of all this strife, whether you realize it or not. You got to understand, I run a major metropolitan police agency. I have an $80 million budget. I've got 504 employees. I have 300 contractors. So I supervise over 800 people. I'm in charge of a final decision on all contracts, arbitrated awards. We work on a lot of legislation. So, you know, we're a pretty big business government-wise. And hey, I got to say, the one difference between me and Chicago, I've run an $80 million budget for 12 years, and I've never been $1 over my appropriation. So I just want to say that we stay within our budget. But now with the sanctuary state, the issue that we really have is that that is the causation. The way ICE, their model works, they have basically a target list. They have people who are here that they know of that are here illegally, and then they have crimes attached to them, and they're seeking those people first. So they have to do what we call a proactive operation because the sanctuary states say you have no access to the jails. Really bizarre foreign concept for us. We have to ignore one of our federal components, ICE. It's really odd to say, let's put a barrier up in between your local police and your federal components. We've never seen that before, but that's what Baby Pritzker demands of us. So with that being said, ICE cannot have access to our jails, so they have to create these teams, and trust me, you have to have a pretty big team to go in Chicago because you're going to have people doxing you, attacking you. You're going to have your politicians running it all and riling everybody up. So now, for one operation, you're going to have to put 20 or 30 agents in action just to extract, 4 people. And then you get what they call the collateral damage, where they've sworn an oath to, affect any kind of immigration arrest. So if they get somebody that's with your rapist or murderer, but they're just here illegally and haven't done anything wrong, if they leave that person behind, they're now responsible for anything they do. If they go and commit a crime, ICE is going to get blamed for not taking action when they had them in custody. So it forces all this action. Now, if you didn't have the sanctuary state, this is what happened before they put this into place. You'd come in, we'd only get the illegal aliens that had committed an ancillary crime, something that you and I would get arrested for also. They come in, we fingerprint them, and it says detainer. We call ICE. They involve the consulate, the magistrate, fancy word for immigration judge. And they determine if they are running from a crime where they came from, or if the new one was a bit large enough magnitude to deport, which, half the time they would, half the time they wouldn't. And then if they would, we would hold them for ICE, and then we would just hand them off to ICE, and you'd have no strife, no danger for anybody, the immigrants or ICE. And now you have to understand, and here's where the business model comes in place. In Illinois, I've gone to 82 counties now, doing what I'm doing, running for governor. It's a huge state. You can drive 7 hours in Illinois and still be in Illinois. It's insane. But anyway, within the 7-hour-long state are 92 correctional facilities like mine. Wow. We're just the second biggest. So there's a rule with ICE holds. That's what they're called when you have an ICE detainer in your jail. When you contact ICE, they have 3 days to pick them up. Otherwise, they have to reimburse for everything. That's just the way it is. So they have to do weekly pickups when they're coming to the jail. So if in a 7-hour-long state, you had 92 jails every day calling them on their ICE holds, they would now have to not be proactive whatsoever. They would probably have to add about 20% more to their manpower to be responsive, and they'd basically be a transport unit. They would have to go to 92 jails every week, constantly. That would also, instead of putting all that risk into trying to extract 5 people in Chicago, they would probably get 200 a week throughout the correctional facility. That's the proper way to do this. We deal with it only in criminality, and then the raids stop. You're siphoning out all the criminal element, because trust me, right now, it's estimated that we have 700,000 illegal aliens in Illinois alone. So
just in Illinois?
And now here, I'm going to give you a cute number. Now you figure out what happened. So the last census we had in 2018, we had lost 800,000 residents, right? And now we have 700,000 illegal citizens. So I should say illegal aliens, not citizens. So we have kept the same number of population almost, and that because believe me, the illegal immigrants are counted in the census. So they keep their congressional seats, they keep their head count. But what a coincidence that we've lost 800,000 residents, but gained 700,000 illegal aliens. That tells me that we're being washed out. That's how socialism works. You keep over-regulating, overtaxing, making things less safe, scaring your population, demeaning your police, and all your regular people are going to leave. Just like, why DuPage County turned Democrat is because they were so afraid of getting carjacked in the city. Wow. They all moved out in DuPage, but then voted the same way they did in the city and turned DuPage blue.
I hope that doesn't happen down here in Florida, because I see people fleeing from other areas, and I'm like, please leave your ideology that you're fleeing from up there. So as you're running, as you're running for governor, you're seeing this basically change of the demographics, where you had 800,000 plus people from Illinois who live there. They leave. The water bucket gets filled back with people who aren't supposed to be there. And is that how some of these blue states are keeping Democrats in power? They're just refilling the bucket with people who aren't supposed to be here and then getting them to the polls.
You nailed it. That's exactly what they're doing. I love that term. I'm going to borrow that from you next time. Refilling the bucket. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's a great analogy. It makes it very understandable. Yes. So they're taking a population that would normally be resistant to the ideologies of J.B. Pritzker or Brandon Johnson, And then they're replacing with people who are dependent. They're getting, a link card. They're getting, hotels. They just put out a bill that's going to cost $2 billion to pay for all their college, all the illegal aliens' college. And get this. This is the Chicago way, right? J.B. Pritzker passes a really bloated budget this time. $55 billion. It's more than we've ever seen a budget for Chicago. But that's not good enough. A month and a half after he sets a July 1 budget, then the next month he says, okay, we're going to spend $2 billion unfunded mandate to deliver college to the illegal immigrants. We're going to now put abortion pills in all the schools, and we're going to do mandatory mental health screening of your children in all the schools, which will eventually put them all into Big Pharma's hands. But that's a different topic. The bottom line is those are three initiatives that are unfunded mandates and add about $3.5 billion to a budget that was just passed. How do you pass a budget in July and then say, in August, September, I'm going to add another $3.5 billion? Don't worry about it. That would be like me telling my county board, our budget's December 1. And then in January say, hey, I'm going to add 40 more cops to my roster. You got that covered at the end of the year, right? But he does it. They're unfunded mandates. They're executive orders or Senate bills or House bills. That's how they get these things through. And there's no vessels to pay for any of this. It never goes in front of a board. It never gets seen or reviewed by anybody. These are, billion-dollar additions to an already existing budget.
So with all that happening, one of the questions, like I've had Danny from Chicago Flip Thread on a couple times. One of the things I keep asking with what we see happening in Minnesota, what are the good people doing? Because you would think the more people who know about this replacement that they're doing, that the good people of the city, of the area, would be as vocalized as the people who are protesting, because they're, as you said, they're just leaving. They're not even choosing to fight.
Yeah, it's a dynamic that I never thought I would see, but what it is, to sum it up in one word, fear. They've created a climate of fear of being called racist, fear of being, doxxed, fear of groupthink and mob mentality. We're seeing a lot of that in the city and in Minnesota and these places where, it's really funny when you see these people get interviewed. Why are you here? Not really sure. It's like, what? Yeah. So we have another dynamic that we're seeing heavy on the internet, and that's paid protesting.
Yeah.
So a lot of people since COVID don't want to come back to work. They want this work from home thing, and they're very attracted to, hey, if I can get paid, $500 a day to hold a megaphone and, call the cops pigs, hey, that's great. That's the job that they want. But we are seeing a lot of this, and there's a lot of, what I anecdotally call Soros money out there, but there's more than just him. J.B. Pritzker, he does the same thing. So they're fueling. When you have a Brandon Johnson, a mayor, who says that the cops are a sickness to be eradicated, and then J.B. Pritzker calling us bootlickers and thugs. And, it's really cute that both of them say that, and then I get pictures from security details that are like, 50 people around the guy protecting them while they're saying that. And it's like, how do you think those guys and girls feel when you're calling them, a sickness to be eradicated, but you're surrounded by security and that's the sickness around you? What a joke. It's demoralizing for the police. And that, because of stuff like that, I've been 44 head count down for like 4 years. I'm just starting to recover some of my head count now.
I was going to ask you that, the morale of constantly turning on a television and your own governor saying different things, Brandon Johnson saying things. Yeah, you got to show up to work to protect not them, but even to protect the protesters. You actually have to go out there and make sure nobody wants to take a shot at them. What kind of morale do the rank and file men and women have that are put in that situation?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. We're really different in DuPage, and I don't know how we've maintained this. We call it the bubble around DuPage County. So we're a half hour from Chicago. Again, we're the second biggest county in the state, and we deal with all this overspill. Here's a crazy statistic I'm going to give you, and I'll get FOIA'd again tomorrow, but that's fine. I've been FOIA'd on this 50 times. Since I've been elected over 7 years. We're the trainers of de-escalation and mental health training and all that kind of stuff. I haven't had, now mind you, I have the second biggest police force too. Since I've been elected, we have not had one use of force complaint from one citizen against one deputy since I've been elected.
Wow.
Over 7 years. I mean, so we get along with our public really, really well out here. I mean, we change our traffic unit into a community resource unit that does food distribution. I do a rehabilitation services. We're the number one in the nation on rehabilitation. And here's where the Safety Act really hurt us. So I have the second biggest correctional facility in Illinois. 80% of the people who come in are high on substance. And I mean, they're all jacked up, whether it's heroin, fentanyl is just so huge right now, alcohol, all these things commingled. And half of them are self-medicating because they have mental health issues.
Yeah.
Believe me, running around in Chicago shooting each other for 15 years will give you PTSD-like symptoms. So we get these people they're in really bad shape. So we do full detoxification, drug recovery, medicated assistant treatment, Suboxone, methadone. I have one-on-one psychiatric service because you need 30 days of proper detoxification to properly diagnose a mental health issue. So once we get your mental health issues and your detoxification in check, then I have this thing called Just of DuPage. It's 200 counselors, educators, and teachers that teach and train 80 courses per week. And we don't depend on kids from Harvard to make a study to tell us how to run a jail. Right. We gain our own statistics and interview everybody and find out the causations why they're here. And believe me, the number 1 and 2 reasons for crime is being sodomized around the age of 6 years old and then being introduced to drugs around 10 or 11. Those are your number 1 and 2 issues for criminality. So our 200 courses backwards engineer that and work with anger management, criminal thinking, the proper detectors that would deal with those particular symptoms. And then after that, we do gang tattoo removal. And then we have job training. So I let College of DuPage build a college within my jail. So I don't have to pay for any of it. The college puts basically a college in my jail. We do drywalling, tiling. We've done welding. Now we're doing virtual reality welding, sanitation, small engine repair, indoor hydroponics, outdoor horticulture. We can create farmers, truck drivers. We're about to open a barber shop. And then all of these classes have brought our recidivism rates down from 75 to 15% and all those opioid numbers down from 90 to 20%.
Can you take a second? Because I'm sure a lot of people who are watching are not going to understand what recidivism is. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so it's repeat offenders is the easiest way to say it. And for me, I was a patrolman for many, many, many years. And there was nothing that I hated more than having to deal with or fight with the same person over and over and over. You could write the report as soon as you get the call. It's like, oh, I'm going to, Mr. Smith's house again. I know what he's going to be doing today. He drinks a lot and blah, blah, blah. So what it is it stops people from coming back. And I have hundreds of letters. Even, I have this thing right here. This is a scroll jar from inmates in the jail that send me uplifting messages to make my day better. And I have 100 correspondences from inmates that say I'd be dead if I wasn't in your correctional facility. Wow. So our programs are really working. But when you take away my ability to hold them for the crimes they committed, because, granted, we held them, but we put them to work. And by the time they left, they're ready to earn and make $50,000, $60,000 a year in a vocational job. But now, if you get caught in Illinois dealing a brick of fentanyl to children, that's not detainable. You'd be out as soon as you see a bond court judge. And the bond court judges say, well, it's a safety act. We have to let them go. So they have a metric, right? Wow. You have to be considered a threat to society or a threat to a specifically named person. And they don't consider a drug dealer being a threat to society. Now, I'm a cop. Let me tell you, street talk, I get popped with a brick of fentanyl. I owe my dealer. And there's going to be trouble if I don't make it good. So as soon as I get out, I got to sell 3 more bricks to make good with my dealer. and you're going to overdose a bunch of kids, and that doesn't make you a threat to society. I don't understand the rationale behind the Safety Act whatsoever.
I don't know Chicago that well, but I lived and spent some time in Baltimore, and I understand political machines and how things work. You're going to run up into a huge political machine, obviously, in Illinois, maybe stretching all the way back into the days of Mayor Daley and things. And in Baltimore, there's a huge parish-oriented political thing where all the not priests, but the pastors and the preachers all somehow herd these people into the polls. In part of your campaign, how are you going to help break down that machine and you must know you're already going to face it?
Yeah, so I look at that machine and I just go back a little further in time. It reminds me of 1920s Al Capone era. And it's never really changed. Right. But here's the dynamic. What has changed? What would make me run for office? I like I said, it's a huge state. It's 7 hours long. So to go to 82 counties, some of my trips are 5, 6, 7 hours long. But I live right next door to Chicago, so I go to Chicago all the time. Here's the dynamic. Let's go back to that 800,000, 700,000 person, snafu. So the difference now is the way it's been really interesting. I got sat down in Chicago by large portions of the community and a lot of the pastors. It's funny you mentioned them. They are people who are in control. Talked to a lot of them, and they explained to me how this whole machine actually works. And it is huge money. People like Pritzker pour in, hundreds of millions of dollars, and they pay the populace. They pay for signatures on petitions. They pay for notaries. They pay for votes if you photograph your vote and talk to the guy in the corner afterwards. And that's how the machine has worked. And people will do a lot of stuff politically for money, even if they don't believe. They'll say, I hate J.B. Pritzker, but they're taking money from him. So, that's the way the machine works. The dynamic that has changed, the huge dynamic that is going to, I think, change all of that is now the baubles that they're giving the people in Chicago aren't anywhere near the $900 tax, property tax hike in your property taxes. When you say to a black man or a brown man, you've lived here your whole life, and we're going to give you $1,200 in benefits. But then you bring somebody who is from China or Russia and say, you get $2,400. You don't think that our population sees that disparity, that they're being scrubbed too? So I think that you can only abuse your population, and money, luring people away with money is only going to work if you're not hitting them on the other side and taking it all back away from them, plus some. So that's the dynamic. Their machine is broken. That part of that machine helped me get signatures. I only needed 5,000 signatures to get on the ballot, and you can only turn in 10. I had 14,000 signatures with barely raising a finger because the machine that used to help J.B. Pritzker was working for me, and that's because they just simply want change. They know that my number one thing is a sanctuary state. That could be an executive order on day one. You get rid of it because we're actually also losing $2 billion a year in federal funds because, when federal law and state law conflict, federal law does prevail. Hate to tell you, that's just how things work. And by violating that federal law, we're being cut $2 billion in benefits. So when everyone realizes that this could be changed in one day, it's a bad policy, and I would say this is the really biggest significant step towards socialism, where you're taking out, you're pressuring out your population that would disagree with you, that would resist. And you're replacing them with a conformant society that is dependent on you for food and shelter. It doesn't take, a long look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs to see where this is going. But this is the first step towards socialism because they're doing this also with land. The reason they're doing the property taxes, they want to get you into probate. They want to, get you to miss a payment and go to probate. Eminent domain across this whole state. Any excuse they have. And, eminent domain is really scary. It's basically where the government can come in and say, I'm going to expand a road, or I need this land over here for government use, and it bites into some of your property, and we're going to take it. We're going to give you what they call a fair offer at first, And if you take that, you get paid what the property's worth, and the government takes that land. But if you fight them, they're going to win, and then you're going to get pennies on the dollar. And I have a neighbor not even far from here that owns a business. They're just doing a small road expansion, but now they have to eat into his property, and they're going to take a big section of his business away just through eminent domain. He's been fighting it for years, and he's lost it. And then
it's crazy.
And then down south, they have a solution for every pocket in Illinois. These are more the urban issues. Now, if you go down south to agriculture, they have a regressive estate tax. So they have two ways to steal from farmers. One, when you transfer your property to, like, say you pass it on to your son, your daughter, you're done and you're going to retire. They take a chunk of the generational wealth. And then they have an estate tax where as soon as you reach $4 million of growth, then you have to pay these exorbitant taxes. And now, mind you, $4 million might sound like a lot of money, but for a farm, that means a farm and maybe 4 or 5 pieces of equipment. And you're going to hit $4 million. So, the president, Donald Trump, and the feds decided to deal with this federally, and they made that estate tax for farms. They jacked it up to $14 million, which I would also be doing day one as governor. Hitting somebody when you're a $4 million farm would be like hitting a brand new restaurant when they just open their doors.
Yeah.
They're fledgling business at that time, and you don't want to harm your small businesses. You want them to grow, succeed, and then they can pay taxes once they're stable. And I think $14 million for a farm is more reasonable.
I got two last questions for you. This one specifically about your campaign. You mentioned day one. Day one, are you running against Pritzker, or is he term limited out, or is he still running again?
And that's another thing I do believe in. I wish there were term limits. There should be term limits, really. Honestly, I think 2 4-year terms on any position. 8 years, let somebody else do it. But no, he has no term limits. It will be J.B. Pritzker. I just cannot wait to get on the debate floor with him.
I would love to see it. So I would, whether it's Pritzker or anybody else, what's your day one strategy? Because I've talked to some of my friends who are deputy sheriffs and around in different counties here in Florida, and I've asked them, how do you stop this craziness that's going on with Chicago? And all of them have said to me, they're not from Chicago. It's like, it's not that hard. You just have to do it. What do you do? What do you do to fix the inner city of Chicago if you're governor of Illinois?
Again, you nail it right on the head. You just have to empower your police.
Yeah.
We're 30 minutes away from Chicago. And, have you seen like the street takeovers where they'll take over a major intersection and do wheelies and all that kind of stuff? They watch that. Have you ever noticed that doesn't get disrupted? That drives me crazy seeing that. So when they started doing that in Chicago, obviously they started trying to do it in DuPage. And we only had one happen on a major roadway. And you know what that means to me? Here's how simple those are. There's a street takeover? Good. 2 squad cars down here, 2 squad cars above, 2 over here, 2 over here. And then we close in on them. We arrest everybody inside the pocket, and we take all of mom and dad's cars and impound them. And that stops it. We did that once. They're like, oh, wow, look what happens in DuPage when we try to take over a street. We lose all our cars, and we all go to jail. And if I can only hold you for 3 days because of the Safety Act, I'll hold you every bit of those 3 days. So you can't go out and do it.
You've been in law enforcement long enough. You may remember him, the sheriff down here in Broward County, Nick Navarro.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a guy who they always used to film the show Cops Around. And everybody's like, hey, there's this area in Fort Lauderdale. We can't get a handle on it. Like, no, that's pretty easy. We just take the bad guys out. And he did all kinds of traffic calming. You can't drive down his street. He put, bright lights in certain areas so they couldn't hide in the shadows. And put him in jail. Like you just said, if I could only hold you for a couple of days, guess what? You're going to have a hotel stay. And then he brought in Fox and they filmed the show, and it became like, everyone's like, okay, people actually would watch because they knew who was going to get busted. It was hilarious.
But that's a sad thing. You understand that better than the entirety of my government in Chicago. What is it? But then again, you have to look at things and you have to analyze why. I'm an investigator. I did 6 years just investigating financial crimes. I've been a budget guy, and you always follow the money.
Right.
And, sometimes you have to understand things exist sometimes because they want it to be that way. They want all this pressure. They want more populace to leave. They want to wash out more population. They refuse to let you give an ID to vote. Do you think that's because it's an error? No, they don't want any kind of identification being verified because then they can't cheat.
Yeah.
You look at these systems; they're built around cheating.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so
and you're 100% right.
Yeah, I got one more question for you.
To be solved in Chicago.
Absolutely. I have one more question for you because we've been going along and I know you got stuff to do. Today, as I was driving home, I heard yet another law enforcement officer. I'm not sure if it was ICE or Customs, but somebody tried to ram him. And I don't know if you guys get blotters or something. And then he had to take a shot at him to save his life. They eventually caught him. Why is it right now people feel like they can do anything to a law enforcement officer? When I was growing up, cop says, stop, you stop. And I'm so over the BS. Well, you're a black man and so. No, I'm not. I've been black for 65 years. And somehow I've survived traffic stops my entire life. What is it with these people who just feel like they just don't want to listen?
Well, you know what it is so police have always been considered an authority figure. And, truthfully, our job is professional. We've always been respected. But when you take another position of perceived respect, whether they're bad guys or good guys or somewhere in between, a governor is considered the highest, elected official in the state. They're respected. So when you have J.B. Pritzker calling us bootlickers and thugs, and you have Walls and you have these other governors that, tell people, hey, no, what you think about police isn't true. They're horrible. They're scum. Go ahead and run them over. They have no right to defend themselves. That gives society a different message. That tells them that this is okay. This is happening where there's political support for this type of activity. And again, it's just like J.B. Pritzker. He does this. The sanctuary state, he could say, okay, I only want the criminals to be dealt with. Let's give access just to the jail so they have to just transport and they're no longer can do raids. But that's not it's not what they want. That takes away his pulpit to fight against Donald Trump. That's all JB wants. That's why he says, come through me. You'll have to get to my people. He calls his people the illegal aliens. I call my people are the citizens of the state of Illinois. But this is just political theatrics, but they're getting dangerous because the people are responding to the politicians. They hear this hateful rhetoric, and they just come up with new words to rile people up with, fomenting. What? Come on, they just use ridiculous monikers to rile up and dox, federal agents and police, and it's so laughable because while they do all this, they have a ring of cops around them. They say Brandon Johnson has 150 cops that he utilizes to protect him, and he calls the police a sickness to be eradicated. But then that goes to show you again. So you have a mayor calling us a sickness to be eradicated. That's the police. And then you have a governor saying that we're thugs and bootlickers and all this kind of stuff. So now that's what society sees. And you know as well as I do, we're in the land of these now. It's all, what this tells me is truth. Everything that comes through is truth. So when you have a jerk of a governor and a mayor totally just disrespecting police and law enforcement, that rubs off on people and it empowers them. Now they feel when they're going out there and trying to run over police, hey, I'm just doing what the governor and the mayor told me to do. That's how they feel. That changes society.
And I was going to close with that because I always say I got one more question based on what you just said about society. I feel like we're this close to losing that societal boundaries because eventually what I've told people is good people are going to stop being good. There's only so much you're going to be able to keep pushing and poking people. As a sheriff and as someone who's running for governor, how do you balance that? How do you balance the idiots that are causing problems from making sure that this whole thing doesn't erupt where good people start taking matters into their own hands? Because the good people have every right to society as these people do. So how do you balance that?
You know, another great point, and I think it culminates to why I'm doing this. I think that in Chicago, particularly, but it's bleeding out in the whole entirety of our state right now, needs an emergency manager. The model of what is happening is so different because we've had a governor, and a mayor that have transformed our way of thinking into anti-police, law enforcement. And I don't think the core people believe in that. I think his imported people do. I think you've definitely brought, and that's a shame. You bring over people that have never been in our country, don't know our customs and ways, and what do they learn? Hate the police, hate the police. That's the message you're delivering to new people who don't understand our customs or traditions, and that we typically, as a society, have always had respect for law enforcement. Yeah. That needs to come back, but I think it can only come back with somebody that's law enforcement at the helm. I don't think we can stand another politician. You know, I always ask this question. How do you think we'd be doing right now with Kamala Harris as president?
We wouldn't be. That's the answer. We wouldn't be. And that's the problem. You would have to retire because you probably couldn't do anything.
Right.
You scare me. It scares me to even think about where we'd be if that were the case. We'd be seeing Mandami times 50, and it's terrifying, absolutely terrifying.
So that's what we would deal with the third term of J.B. Pritzker. It would be just like Kamala. For Illinois, it would be just like having Kamala Harris.
So when is the election? Is it in November, or is it another year from now? When's the governorship?
No, it's the primary. Early voting starts February 5th, and the election is March 17th. And then the general with me and J.B. Pritzker would be November 2nd.
All right. Well, I hope there's enough people in the state of Illinois that see this and understand. Sheriff Mendrick, thank you for your time and good luck. And as you get closer, we'd like to have you back on. Let us know how things are going.
That would be great. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It was an absolute pleasure.
And to you and your officers or deputy sheriffs, God bless and keep you guys all safe out there.
God bless. Thank you so much.